What would be an outcome that you would call a success?
This disease is very progressive, and we know that our daughter has not too much time, and we already know that there is some damage in her brain, in the muscles. So we are well known this, but I think even if we could achieve that she not suffering, or even if we could achieve that we can help her with a better life quality, or a longer life, I think that could be a very big success in this situation. Of course, as a parent, I really want the best for my daughter, but I'm realistic. So even a small thing what is helps my daughter, I would be very happy for that.
Okay. And what were the challenges or difficulties that led to this project?
At the beginning, when we received the diagnosis, it was really hard to understand what is this GM1, why is it not treatable. Then we spoke to a lot of doctors, and all of them said that there is no cure for GM1, they cannot help in either way. And then we started to find some solutions in the world, and sadly there is not a solution approved. There are some trials or other ideas how to solve this disease, or how to cure this disease, but nothing is approved. We tried a lot to get in some other trials what is already working, but we ran out of time. Our daughter was too old for some trials, and also we got the diagnosis in the middle of COVID. So that was the biggest problem. Because of COVID, we didn't have the chance to travel in other places. So then we started to think about, and also our daughter needed to hospitalized for a long time, and we made how you say, so we when our daughter came out from the hospital, we said that if she is so strong, we need to help her as much or more than before. And then we decided to create a foundation for her, and also for find a cure for GM1. And this was the hardest period of our life, got the diagnosis, understand all the rejection from other companies and doctors. So it was really hard, but at the end, we do believe that everything is possible. We really believe in this, but the time is really matter. So we will see what we can achieve.
Yes. And what if it takes longer than the estimated 2 years?
Yes. So as I said, we know well the disease progression, and there is a high chance that our daughter dies before the end of the project. But we really want to help also others to find a cure, because this disease is really horrible, and there are a lot of other families so in the world without any treatment and any help. So of course the main thing is to help our daughter, but we also want to continue until we find the solution or the cure.
Yes. And why does it take so long to develop a therapy, maybe?
As far as there are initial steps that needs to be realized before bringing some therapeutic to the market. The conventional way, it normally takes between 10 years and 12 years to have a medication for a patient with a very high failure rate. And reasons for long procedures are actually 6 different steps in drug development. You have to have first basic research where you actually look at the substance itself, discover the proper substance. Then you have initial test in animals or in cells, where most of the substance also fail. And then if a molecule is required good, it also needs to work for clinical phase 1 and 2. And this is time dependent. So preclinical studies normally takes up to 3 years, and clinical phases as well. This is because steps need to be done, and these are time dependent. Yes, maybe you want to add something else?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not unusual that there's decades of basic research that leads to the initial steps of the drug development and all these phases, and it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of coordination, and pharmaceutical industry is one of the most regulated industries, actually maybe the most regulated industry. So there's a lot of quality assurance, and this effort takes a lot of time, coordination it with lots of players, from clinics to doctors to the companies who are involved in the development, the production, manufacturing, and it takes easily more than 12 years to bring a drug into the market if it's successful. And along the way, one can imagine that a lot of these drugs are also failing, right? And either they fail because they are found to be toxic to humans, or they fail because they are not so effective in terms of the treatment, and they can fail even at the very last step in larger studies, in phase 3 clinical trials, for instance. And all of this takes a lot of time, and it's very reasonable to expect that even if you have a good candidate, there's no guarantee if it's will be in the market. If it's done, then it may take quite some time because of all these reasons. Yeah.
Okay. And what other strategies will the foundation take to cure GM1?
Yes, so our foundation is to help the patients with GM1 and also to find a cure for GM1, and the main thing is to help our daughter, of course. So we try to work in different stations. We also would like to set up an equipment team, how you say that, to help parents taking care of children with GM1, because it's really hard for the families when they take the diagnosis. They could not have the special beds, the special bathtub. So there are a lot of special equipment what we families need when our daughter suffer, or when our child suffers from some kind of diagnosis. So one part is for this, to make it happen, to help the families. The other is to find a cure, and we started to work with the Norganoid, and also we would like to set up a clinical trial in Hungary with a 4-patient trial with another type of solution for this disease. So we really fight in a lot of other ways, because of course there is a chance that one of them is not that fast or not working that much. So we need to move, and we need to work in different stages or in different places.
What do you think about the combination of strategies?
One thing that perhaps these therapies can be, or these different therapies can be complementary to each other. It might be that one of the treatments is very good at slowing down the disease progression, but the patients may still require complementary therapies to increase the life quality, for instance, or manage the symptoms. And it's unpredictable how the outcome will be. So I think it's a very good strategy to try different things, even in parallel. Because I mean, in the very worst case, we'll have competing strategies, and one of the treatments may not work for all the patient populations, or vice versa for different reasons. So, because of the unpredictable nature of biomedical development, I think this is a very good way of approaching.
But of course, such an approach of combining different therapies need clinicians, experts to guide. You need them to work well together, to observe and to monitor the trial of combining different therapies together.
Okay, and what are the financial requirements?
So basically, because we are working in different ways as a foundation, we said that we need a really lot of money, because to buy special equipments, to fund or to finance, to have enough money to set up a trial, that is a really lot of money to have the doctors, to have the place, to have the equipment needed for the trial, or also to have the drug, for example, in this case. So this is really really a lot of money, and also to develop some kind of new therapies. It's really a lot. So as a foundation, we try to fund as much as we can, and to use that money the best way we can. So this is our goal.
Yes, an issue is also that producing a drug for a single treatment is more expensive than producing drug for more people. The initial steps more or less are the same, but the production of a small batch under GMP regulation, this is most of the time the most expensive part of bringing some product to the market, and that's why research and the production is so cost intense. For realizing such therapies.
I mean, also the research itself, and we're going to a bit more detail, the equipment, the labs, and the personnel,
human resources,
all of these contribute to huge cost over time. And just a very simple example would be, you can buy a microscope to look at yourself, or the same money that you can buy a Ferrari or maybe a flat or something. So this is the range of cost that we are talking about. Of course, there are ways to mitigate these things, but at the end you need a lot of equipment, specialized equipment, consumables, and everything, which all contributes to the the cost of research.
And you just need time to generate data.
Exactly, it's very timely. Time is another cost, and a very significant cost also in this whole thing.
Okay, then a question for the company, for Norvenoid. What did you think about a foundation led by a parent approaching you instead of a company?
Of course, this is a very special situation. Normally we do business to business, but in this special situation, I think this is something that is beneficial to all the players here involved. On the one hand, we have a situation where we can prove our system to work. We can prove our device system, or we can actively practice our device system. This is what it's actually in the end intended for, that you model diseases, you generate tissue, you model diseases, and to find treatment. And here we have a case where we can not just show that tissue production is working, but we can also actually go to that state where we can test a substance that in the end may have an important impact.
Okay, and Novanoid's initial approach was slightly different. How does this project impact that?
Here again, it's beneficial to our company to have this opportunity to realize this project. Being a young company and specifically a startup, you have to be very flexible. And this is what we did in the end. We are finding also new way to do business. And I think that having other consumers or customers, it's a new field, it's a new chance, and this is something that can become superior. You want to add something?
Yes, I mean, also by a good coincidence, actually, this fit very well to our initial approach, actually. I mean, this was true that, I mean, the initial idea was to provide this more as a service to maybe to other companies, but because of the nature of the disease and the model and that we were working on, this was a very good fit, and therefore we were able to be flexible enough to adapt, to learn more, but also be able to provide as quickly as possible.
And it gives us also the opportunity to learn, as you mentioned, and to provide such services to more people that need such kind of services. I think there are a lot of people in need there, and maybe this is some chance where also the traditional way of developing a drug can be challenged and can be brought to the next stage, where it's more towards the people that really need the treatment rather than. I think that it's easier to visualize a mass of people that you want to treat rather than a unique person. But different boundaries are broken up here, so it gets very personal, and this is what treatment also always should be. It's not just a business, it's getting closer to people and really trying to find solutions out there. And personalized medicine is being established anyway. We are in an era where this is gaining more and more importance because we have learned from traditional way of drug development, and yes.
Okay, now the final question, what are your opinions on the future of GM1?
Ideally, we will manage to find a solution that effectively can treat GM1, and that would be, I mean, if we manage to maybe solve one problem, or to have some drug for one patient, there's a higher chance of having also therapeutic for other patients suffering from GM1. So I think it's there's a high potential behind this project.
We need also help and support from the regulatory side to help try new novel therapies, because one big challenge has been so far is to kind of overcome this challenge, and this traditional way of fractal, as Charlotte mentioned, is that it works well with large diseases in a way that it protects patients from certain risks, but in diseases like GM1, where the outcome is pretty much determined, and the risks are just very high by not being able to treat it, we need to try different things, and we need to develop therapies that are different than this traditional pharmaceutical development. But the problem is that a lot of large companies or pharmaceutical companies avoid it because it's a small market, it's risky, and okay, this is changing, that's true. A lot more companies are actually paying attention to rare diseases, and this is a good thing. But what is or has been a bit ambiguous was the regulatory side and how this can be managed. But I think, so I'm optimistic that I think agencies are aware of the situation, obviously, and they are working on it as well. And diseases like GM1 and GM1 itself as well, in my opinion, have a good prospect. The question is, how quickly can we do that? And the earlier, the better, the more people we can help. And this is what I'm hoping for, what we're all hoping for.
Vincent, I think you already
Yeah.
explained the previous questions, but
Yeah, so I think the GM1 gangliosidosis will be treated. I believe in this. So I'm not a professional, I'm not a doctor, I just believe. And I'm afraid of time, of course, but I really do believe that in the future we should avoid such suffering, because so before birth, is it possible to check the embryo for GM1? So if in the future we will have some solution, I think children with GM1 could have a full of life. So I believe in this, and our foundation is really work on this to have this happen.
okay, thank you for answering the questions.
I just feel like